Hello world, it's afternoon time on Thursday the 24th of October 2019, but this isn't going to get posted until around midday on tomorrow on Friday. First of two videos. Firstly, looking at the astrological state of the world at the moment, where it seems that in every country of the world, the centre ground is now a foreign country. And Mercury is just about to go retrograde. We have been now in Mercury retrograde shadow for about 9 or 10 days. And along with many other people, I have noticed this Mercury retrograde shadow strongly. And so have a lot of other people. It's in many ways, it's a classic one in that lots of software and hardware malfunctions, communication problems, lots of issues around miscommunication. And unusually, it seems as if the preliminary shadow, pre the actual retrograde, where Mercury is moving forward over the ground that it will later go backwards over, seems to be stronger than normal. I kind of hope, when I've seen this in the past, it suggests that the actual retrograde period itself might be a little bit easier than normal. We shall see. Let's hope so. But of course, it's not just the Mercury retrograde. This is happening at the end of Scorpio. There's a number of other planetary issues going on, which are brewing fast. We're so focused on the Mercury retrograde, we're not seeing the bigger picture behind the scenes. That of Jupiter now moving into the last quarter of Sagittarius and getting ready for its movement into Capricorn, where it will join Saturn and Pluto. And this will have happened within 6 to 7 weeks from now. And there has not been a time in living history where we've had Jupiter and Saturn and Pluto all together in Capricorn. It's not happened for hundreds and hundreds of years. It seems that all over the world that there's malignancy. People are becoming increasingly disenchanted with the so-called ruling elite, whether it is the riots in Chile, the suppression in Venezuela, the ongoing impeachment saga in America, the recent Canadian election and the fall from grace of Justin Trudeau, whether it is the extremist politics in Australia, and particularly the kind of shameful pictures that we're seeing from Uluru in central Australia, with desperate white people trying to climb that mountain for the very last time. That's tacky and sad. Hong Kong is been kicking off for months and months and months, and China, the sleeping dragon, is going to be a major emerging role player in years to come. China's very much an early Aquarian energy, and with Saturn followed by Pluto coming into Aquarius over the coming years, the rise and then possibly the fall of China is going to become a major factor in world history over the coming decade or two. Depends very much how China handles its social patterns, particularly around alcohol and gender imbalance. Sleeping dragon indeed. Even in the more obscure places like Thailand, there's discontent. As for Europe, well, as for Britain, I'm not qualified to talk on Europe, but as for Britain, my goodness. The centre ground has completely disappeared. The polarisation of politics. One thing has become obvious in Britain in recent months, and that is that Britain is not ruled by the monarchy, and neither is it ruled by the government. Britain is ruled by the Parliament. And on the one hand, that's not a bad thing because it's kept us from going to extremes. But extremes are the order of the day at the moment in Britain, and the latest development to call a general election on December the 12th, I think, certainly right on top of the full moon, on the day of the full moon in Gemini, which after all is Boris Johnson's sign, suggests to me that years ago I suggested that Donald Trump was going to come into seriously big trouble, which I suggested at the time might see the end of his presidency around September, October, November 2019. Similarly, 6 to 8 months ago, I suggested that Boris Johnson was going to be facing up to his own long dark night of the soul around mid-late November 2019. And it does seem as if that one is on course to happen. I can't help feeling that he's about to kind of implode in some type of bombastic inversion. We shall see. We shall see. But I have said in the past many times that Britain would not leave the European Union on October the 31st the way that everyone suggested it would, because we have Mercury retrograde starting on that day. And now with 6 days to go before that date, it very much looks like we will not be leaving the European Union on October the 31st. But it's day by day at the moment as far as that goes, and the rest of Europe is also sort of looking at Britain and scratching their heads and going, what do we do with this unruly child? The world's in a mess. Now, once you look beyond the Mercury retrograde, with Jupiter joining Saturn and Pluto in Capricorn and then getting very strong as they get into the early new year, and then there will be a time in the early new year when Mars moves into Capricorn and joins Jupiter, Saturn and Pluto for a period of 6 weeks. And this takes place, I think, over mid-February through to early April. That is going to be an absolutely critical time. And the decisions and the actions taken then will have very long-term repercussions. And they probably won't be that well thought out. And the reason I'm saying that is because 6 months down the line from that, by the time we're into the third quarter of next year, Mars is going retrograde in Aries, squaring Jupiter, Saturn and Pluto 3 times. So it's going to get quite messy. And yet, perhaps it's because I've got the moon in Sagittarius, but my glass is half full. And I do believe that at the end of the day, you know, politics apart, what good is it arguing about politics and who can live next door to each other and which politician is right and which one is wrong if we haven't got a planet to live on? We're tending to miss the bigger picture here, and that's that the planet is, regardless of the reasons, but the planet is suffering massively, and the extinction of life is now becoming a real possibility. Much more so in the consciousness than it would have been 20 years ago. And I'm not harping on about global warming or carbon dioxide or carbon monoxide. So don't bother trolling me and saying you don't know what you're talking about, you don't know the science. You're right, I don't. But I do know, because I can see it with my own eyes, that the planet is going through some type of environmental escalation and crisis. And I don't see any sign of that reversing. So the way we deal with that, regardless of politics, has to be the number one priority. But of course, it won't be because there's no profit. Nevertheless, I still got this nagging feeling that it's going to be all right at the end of the day. But there's going to be some type of mass wake-up call, which seems to be happening on the streets. It's just that it hasn't reached through to the so-called ruling elite yet. I suspect that Mars in Aries next year is going to accelerate and exacerbate the existing extremes to a point where there will have to be some type of elastic snap back into centre ground collectively across the planet, because there literally won't be any other way at that time. But at the moment, the world is in a state of disenchantment. And that's going to be the subject of my second video. Catch you later, world. Bye.